Welcome to Soil Science and Management, Chapter 15, and today we're going to talk about organic amendments. In this chapter, we're going to discuss the benefits of organic amendments, how to use animal manures, what are biosolids. We're going to talk a little bit about composting. Um, we're going to list environmental side effects of fertilizers and amendments. So we've kind of talked about organic material since the beginning of this chapter, or excuse me, since the beginning of this book. And I'm pretty sure by now you should understand what the benefits are of this organic material. But what it really does is it helps to raise soil nutrient levels, and it does it in a natural way. And these organic materials tend to be slower releasing, so the materials can stay in the ground longer, thus acting as like a storage facility for these nutrients. Um, Also, the organic material has an effect on physical condition of the soil, so it can make it a bit lighter, can help drainage, can help water move through the soil, also helps with water retention within the soil, giving these soils better access and better use of water. They probably one of the best things that they do is work to increase the beneficial organisms that are in the soil. Having these microorganisms thrive and break down these organic materials really helps to make a strong, healthy soil. um, so animal manures are really good sources of nitrogen and potassium. They are very, very strong in these two um, elements. Unfortunately, they are sometimes can be hot. You can't apply these directly to plants, and typically they are added into a soil and then mixed or tilled in. You do not apply them directly to the tops of plants unless they've been composted to reduce some of the nitrogen within the plant. Excuse me, within the manure. Um, so they um, can leach the nitrates into the water table, and that's a big problem with animal manures. They also have a tendency to transport pathogens that can be detrimental to humans, and uh, it's always recommended to compost animal manure if you're going to be handling it directly, because you don't want to get sick and you don't want to have any of these issues. Um, so understanding that manure is good and it's a good source of nutrients, but handling it correctly is very important. Typically, they are solid or liquid. The liquid is basically urine and the feces that has been liquefied and will be sprayed over the top of the ground, or solid is typically broadcast and then mixed or tilled into the ground. There are a few different types of animals that are better than others. Um, Obviously, steer manure is something that is going to be abundant due to the dairy industry as well as the beef cattle industry, and it can be very beneficial. This is not typically as hot as other manures and can be used more directly, whereas, say, chicken manure is typically more hot, more nitrogen, and needs to be diluted before it can be utilized directly into a soil application. Um, so manure that is composed of urine typically only contains about 50% of the nutrients as pure manure. This is something that hasn't been composted. In my recommendation, in the landscape horticulture industry, you want to take these manures, you want to let them compost, you want to let them break down, and all these nutrients to become stronger and more concentrated within the manure to help them become a better source of these nutrients. Unfortunately, one of the things that manure can bring is seeds, and if you unwanted seeds, and if you place this in, say, a turf stand, you can have undesired Bermuda grass, for example, if you were in a wanting only cool season turf, or you could have other broadleaf weeds that survive the gut of the animal and then are part of their manure and will be germinated in the area you do not want them to be germinated. So the best way to handle solid manure is to spread immediately. Um, Again, I'm going to recommend you compost it and then you spread it through composting. Liquid is not something that is done typically in a landscape setting. This is more for agricultural settings. You want to test the manure and soil for nutrients to make sure you're not adding in too many salts. You want to ensure that you are not adding in um, um, more nutrients than the soil can handle. You want to make sure you are spreading this evenly and using a calibrated equipment to ensure that you are not having nutrient loading or salt loading in certain areas. You want to incorporate this into the soil, so till it into the soil as quickly as you possibly can. And you want to ensure that the material has a chance to incorporate with the soil before you then start seeding or planting. So, as I spoke earlier, you have to be very careful with these manures because they will leach out nitrates. A couple things that you need to be cognizant of is nearby waterways, creeks, streams, or soils that promote runoff and leaching. These can harm the water table, they can harm water bodies, um, can be to the great detriment of the environment around the area of planting. So this is, I'm not going to speak too much about this. This is for agricultural applications. Um, and then we come to biosolids, and biosolids is also known as sewage, sludge, or human waste. This is after the process of the solid waste going through a water treatment plant. They typically take the solids and dewater them and allow them to be utilized in landscape or agricultural settings. Unfortunately, they do sometimes contain heavy metals or pesticides. They can contain human pathogens. They can contain prescription drugs if they are being flushed. They can be a vector for pests, and they do include soluble salts. Now, most of the biosolids nowadays are being composted to try to remove some of the human pathogens or vectors within them, so the odor issues also go away in this process. But these biosolids, if you can get a good source of them without a lot of extra added things, that can be a very good source of fertilizer and organic material. So federal rules are used in applying biosolids. Again, this is more for agricultural applications. Basically, the rules state that once you apply it, you must till it in and not wait to till it in, past a few hours, so that people are not exposed directly to the biosolids. Talked a little bit about this, but composting is very important materials, and utilizing these materials, these manures, these biosolids in your compost can make your compost very strong, be a great source of nutrients for plants. Basically, these materials will break down and create a great additive. Good organic material will even itself out. It helps to work on the carbon to nitrogen ratio within a soil, and it can encourage beneficial organisms to help um, encourage these microbes to be grown in the soil itself. So there are 3 different stages of composting. You have the mesophilic, that is when decay starts to happen and the temperature will rise due to microbial activity. You have the thermophilic, and that is when temperature rises to about 150 degrees Fahrenheit. And then you have curing, and that's when stabilization or good, solid, strong compost is made. So what are some of the concerns of fertilizers in the environment? Animal and human health. Again, we talked a few lectures ago about nitrates, and nitrates cause something called blue baby syndrome if they get into the water table. So we have to be very, very careful not to overload on nitrates and allow that to leach out of our soil. We have to be extremely careful to only utilize what we need. We also have eutrophication. That is when you have algae growth, and this will be on any kind of open water source because of the nitrogen loading that will go into the uh, uh, waterway. It will encourage the algae to grow and in turn can cause hypoxia, which will kill the fish because the algae has then sucked all of the oxygen out of the lake or waterway. And fertilizers can cause high energy costs to be produced, to be spread, and so manures and compost can be a good way to alleviate some of these higher costs. And then humans can have changed the global nitrogen cycle to kind of work it themselves by using the petroleum-based fertilizers. And when we utilize manures, we can reincorporate some of that natural nutrients back into the environment without having to utilize petroleum or other synthetically based fertilizers. So best management practices when we're talking about fertilizers and the environment, we want to ensure that we're only using the correct tillage and we're using the correct irrigation methods. We want to make sure that we're handling manure and being cognizant of the environment that's around it. Making sure that we're delivering and applying at the correct times. We want to use precise applications so that we are not having extra fertilizer being applied or it being applied unevenly. Using slow release fertilizers can help because then you can reduce the amount of leaching that will take those fertilizers through the root zone. And then also looking into utilizing organic and sustainable agriculture practices to ensure that we aren't using more fertilizers than are needed in our applications. So this chapter basically talked about the manure and the biosolids composting, and then adding in those as organic material to help bring that back into the soil profile to increase the amount of healthy biological activity, to increase the health of the soil, and to allow these organic materials to hold on to water within the soil and just generally make the soil stronger and more healthy. So thank you for joining me, and we will see you next time.